everyone. Welcome to SJ Weekly for September 16th, 2018, even though I'm recording it on the 17th. As you know, last week's episode was cut short because I just had no time, and I was also late a day, and this week I'm also late a day. It's just basically been a swirling shitstorm the past 2 weeks. But this time, you know what? I'm going to do double the normal article. It's going to be double the length of an episode. I hope you guys enjoy. There was one guy who commented that, oh, this series is going downhill. Well, this is me coming back uphill, okay? And also, because I haven't really done it recently, listen to this. Nothing like a chilled coffee in a warm afternoon. Somehow Canada's being hit with a heat wave when this fucking snow should be coming. It's bullshit. But here we are. The Sex Offender Registry leaves female sex offenders open to abuse. Oh no. Oh no. I mean, male sex offenders have never been open to abuse by anyone. It's harder to say, well, I don't want to do this with you, or I want to wait to have sex. How do you assert a boundary when you have broken a law? I don't know. Maybe you should ask all of the male sex offenders who have been rightfully demonized over the course of human history. Oh my god. In the coming months, Jenny will be extra vigilant at checking her mailbox before her husband and daughter do. The holiday season is the time of year the letters tend to come. Most likely the return address will be the state penitentiaries in Angola or Dixon, Louisiana. Often what is written follows a pattern. The letters will start off telling Jenny how the inmate saw her picture and that she looks lovely and he doesn't judge her for what she did. Then things go downhill. I want you to teach me so bad, read one letter dated April 3rd of 2016, and written on lined paper with a blue pen. You're my fantasy, spelled you're wrong right there, but I'm sure that was in the letter. I wish I blessed to touch your body. These guys almost sound like Indians trying to slide into the DMs with Bob and Vagine. Jenny, who is in her early 40s, said more than 100 sexually grotesque letters, some 5 or 6 pages long, have landed in her mailbox in her 3 years on Louisiana's sex offender registry. Her photo, home address, charge, as a teacher she had sex with a 16-year-old student. You mean she raped a 16-year-old student? I don't like it when the fucking news media, especially shitty publications like Vice, when they do this, they say, oh, she had sex with a 16-year-old student. If it were a male teacher and a female 16-year-old student, it would be rape. They would say rape, and they would plaster this guy's photo fucking everywhere. Even her scars and tattoos are listed on the state sheriff's website. Some news reports about her crime also list her address. And this is not Vox, this is Vice. And Vice didn't say a single fucking thing about it whenever this happens to a male sex offender. The plight of registered female sex offenders could be a hard sell to some. You mean to people with a brain. Like males who offend, they can and do cause extreme physical and emotional damage to their victims. In addition to prison time, they can also be subject to a long list of lifetime restrictions such as where they can live and work, as well as being listed, often publicly, on their state sex offender registry. The reason for these post-sentence restrictions come under the guise of public safety, but a growing number of critics are disputing the true benefits of what they call draconian laws. Oh, because it's women who are affected now. When it was men who were affected, nobody cared. Shauna Baldwin, 34, has received her share of letters from strangers, describing their male parts to me, asking if I've ever been gangbanged, if I have rape fantasies, she said. They assume that I'm a closet sex freak because I'm on the registry. Well, you did do something that a closet sex freak would do. I mean, I'm serious. It's just right here. The now mother of 3 was convicted at 19 for having sex with a 14-year-old male. Like, that's a pretty big gap, you know? Like, when you're in your 20s or your 30s or your 40s, a 5-year age gap is not a big deal because, you know, you're all consenting adults. You've established yourselves a bit more. You know who you are. But 19 and 14, that's a big gap because at 14, you still don't really know who you are yet. And at 19, you at least have a bit of an idea. There's an obvious physical difference between a 19-year-old and a 14-year-old. I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't have much sympathy for these people. These people who are like, "Oh, I made a terrible mistake. I made a terrible mistake in my past, and I should not be treated this way by society." You fucked children. That's what you did. Several years ago, Tanya, a therapist in her 30s, had sex with a 17-year-old client. Again, raped. Tanya is not publicly listed on her state's registry because she is a level 1, the category considered least likely to reoffend. However, her probation requires she disclose her status before sexual contact with anyone. She finds men are either repulsed by it or begin to fetishize her. "It's harder to say, well, I don't want to do this with you, or I want to wait to have sex," said Tanya. "How do you assert a boundary when you've broken a law?" It's a very good question, Tanya. Maybe you shouldn't have broken that law. Maybe you shouldn't have, as a 30-year-old grown woman, fucked a 17-year-old. No. Now I need to correct myself. Raped a 17-year-old. Kim, also in her 30s, reported similar experiences with some men she has dated and worked with. They tend to present unsolicited and aggressive propositions once they find out her status on the Kansas registry. "They want to tie me up and blindfold me and make me their little slut," as one guy put it, said Kim, who was convicted of raping an 11-year-old. I guess when it's 11, you can no longer say have sex with an 11-year-old. Maybe that's Vice's lower limit. You know, once you get to 11 years old, even if it's a woman, you have to say rape, even for them. In any case, I've had a video on the radical left's acceptance of pedophilia. I've had that video idea brewing for a while, and I will probably use this article in it. Because honestly, I have no sympathy for these women, just like I have no sympathy for male sex offenders. But let's move on to a different type of radical left nonsense. Starting in 2019, if your film isn't diverse, it won't be eligible for a BAFTA award. So when you go to judge a film, you might look at the quality of the acting, or the music, or the makeup, or the special effects, technical expertise, script writing. But how about diversity quotas? In an incredibly bold move, the British Academy of Film and Television Arts announced last week, beginning in 2019, works that do not demonstrate inclusivity in their production practices will no longer be eligible for the Outstanding British Film or Outstanding Debut by a British Writer, Director, or Producer awards at the annual BAFTAs, often considered the UK equivalent of the Oscars. Eligible projects must showcase this in two of the following ways, as the BBC reported: on-screen characters and themes, senior roles and crew, industry training and career progression, and audience access and appeal to underrepresented audiences. BAFTA will also remove the requirement that newly admitted voters be recommended by 2 existing members. In other words, if you want to be eligible for a BAFTA award, your film or your television show has to be staffed with a bunch of diversity hires and has to promote government propaganda. Many people will undoubtedly find this move to be blasphemous, leaning on the tired crutch of artistic freedom to label BAFTA as intrusive. They can live and die by that sword if they like, but they'll only be proving that they're not quite as creative or imaginative as they claim to be. I'm not sure that's the case. I think most artists would like to be left alone to create the art that they want to create. Nobody's saying that you cannot create an art that has, a rainbow-colored cast. Nobody's saying that you can't put minorities into your story. But I think the problem is that artists who would not necessarily put a specific minority into a specific role in their movie or in their show are now being forced to do so. They're being forced to shoehorn them in. For example, when the Doctor in Doctor Who regenerated as a woman, I actually didn't mind that because they had shown in the past lore of the series that other Time Lords had regenerated into women as well. Like they had switched genders through regeneration cycles. So having a female Doctor was completely fine by me. To contrast that, people who want James Bond to be played by Idris Elba, that makes no sense to me because James Bond, as a character, has always been white. And unlike Doctor Who, there is no in-universe mechanism that will allow the character of James Bond to change race or gender. And this actually reminds me of the Oscars canceling the popular film category for 2019. Those of you who don't know, for 2018, the Oscars introduced a new award called the Popular Film. So it was based on just pure audience popularity. And I think it was 2018 they introduced it. And many people say the reason they introduced it is so that Black Panther could win an Oscar. Because Black Panther was not going to win Oscars any other way. It was not going to get Best Picture. The Oscars' new popular film category has proved not very popular after all. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences announced Thursday that it will not introduce the... Fucking... God damn it. Is that V? The Academy recognized that implementing any new award 9 months into the year creates challenges for films that have already been released. The Board of Governors continues to be actively engaged in discussions and will examine and seek additional input regarding this category. To be clear, this news doesn't mean the category is completely dead, only that it will require further discussions before it's fully implemented. That bodes well for Black Panther's chances of a Best Picture nod. No, it doesn't. The new category was widely seen as a way to bolster the movie's chances of being nominated and probably winning an Oscar. Obviously. Given that the Academy's track record with diversity is shaky and superhero flicks are seldom recognized. No, that's definitely not the case. I mean, do you remember The Dark Knight? That was a superhero flick. Didn't it win a bunch of awards? And regarding diversity, maybe the Academy's track record with diversity was kind of shitty 50 years ago. I don't think that's the case now. Now, Black Panther will at least be judged on its own merit rather than have to settle for a second-class victory. This is a very interesting line. And, no, come on. This is a very interesting line. And that's because it leads into my next article, which was the one that was cut from last week. The case against equality of opportunity. It's an incoherent, impossible ideal. And if we're really going to fight inequality, it needs to be abandoned. This line... and at the end of this article here. For Black Panther to be judged on its own merit, that is equality of opportunity. That means that Black Panther has the opportunity to be judged up against every other movie. However, if it was equality of outcome, as this upcoming article would like to see the rest of the world exist under, everyone would be getting a second-class victory. Because think about it. Equality of outcome means the outcomes for everyone is the same regardless of what people put into it. That means that in the case of Oscars, every movie gets an Oscar. It's the same outcome. And that's what this article wisely recognizes as a second-class victory. Equality of opportunity is the honor of being judged on your own merit. Even if you fail, it's better to be judged on your own merit and come up lacking than it is to be handed a gold star by the teacher. But here we go. The case against equality of opportunity. Everyone wants equality of opportunity. It is not a subject of political debate, but the precondition of political debate. Promises to achieve equality of opportunity, like promises to create jobs and protect America abroad, are the white noise of the campaign season, drawing neither notice nor challenge. Respected think tanks like the Brookings Institution establish entire projects devoted to figuring out how to advance equality of opportunity. Raj Chetty and Emmanuel Saez, two of the best microeconomics of their generation, have joined forces to start the Equality of Opportunity Project, which is meant to produce hard numbers about opportunity across time and across regions. Huge amounts of time, money, and intellectual effort are devoted to this idea that a just world is one in which opportunity is equal even if outcomes aren't. Well, that is the case. That is a just world. Because opportunity being equal means that everyone gets a shot. Some of them will take it. Some of them will take it, but maybe not as optimally as they should. Some of them will squander it. That's what freedom is. Freedom means that outcomes are always going to be different. Period. Because some people will simply not put in the work. Politicians like to talk about freedom and equality like they're these two obvious things that the society needs. And of course, they are two things that society needs. However, freedom and equality are two virtues that are equal in importance, but also directly opposed to each other. Because if people are completely free, they will never be equal. There will always be somebody that, through their own effort, rises to the top of the hierarchy. And if people are completely equal, then they will never be free, because everyone must be flattened down to the lowest standard of living, the lowest possible denominator, all of the second-rate victories that the world has to offer. So even though they're both important, and even though people just lump them together into a blender like they're compatible values, they're really not. Society exists on a scale with freedom on one side and equality on the other, and it precariously balances, and managing that balance is how you operate in a liberal democracy. And this article is really ridiculous because every time it talks about equality of opportunity, it's actually describing equality of outcome. No one really wants equality of opportunity, nor anything close to it, nor should they. Pursuing true equality of opportunity would require turning America into a dystopian, totalitarian nightmare, and even then it would still prove impossible. See, that's what equality of outcome is. The Soviets aggressively pursued equality of outcome. They said that all the rich people in society, all the hyper-productive people, all the talented people, they must have exploited their way to the top. The excess privileges they enjoy must have been unjustly taken from the underclass. So we are going to brutally equalize everyone. We're going to level the playing field. We're going to even the score. And that ended up with the slaughter of millions of people. And then, once all of the hyper-productive people were dead in the Soviet Union, their economy just ground to a halt because nobody knew how to do anything. Nobody had the gumption to get up and do anything. And those few people who did have the drive to potentially build something of themselves, they didn't do it because they realized they wouldn't be able to enjoy the fruits of their labor. So that is what a totalitarian dystopian nightmare is. Equality of outcome. Moreover, equality of opportunity is simply a bad goal. It assumes that life is a zero-sum competition for wealth and status, that the most important thing is ensuring that only the smartest and hardest working among us end up the victors. It assumes there will always be an underclass. It just wants to reserve membership for those who truly deserve it. The people who believe in equality of outcome, the people who are the communists and the socialists, they actually believe that life is a zero-sum competition for wealth and status. They believe that there's only so much wealth and status to go around, only so much total value in existence in human society, and that if the rich have more value, that means that the poor have less value, and that they took it from them. And the only way to actually run society is to take all of the collective value of humanity and equally distribute it amongst everyone in a perfect portion. In a perfect pie slice. The problem with that is that it is obvious, and it can be demonstrated that wealth and status, that value in society, is not a zero-sum game. And that's because we generate value all the time. I mean, think about it. Let's say that society was made up of 100 units of value, okay? And the socialists and communists nowadays, the equality of outcome people nowadays, they want to take those 100 units of value and divide them into 7.4 billion equal pieces for every single person on the planet right now. I think it's 7.4 billion people on the planet. So they divide up these 100 units, and you get like some minor share, some very tiny amount of value. And there's your share, and everyone gets an equal share, and that's that. I mean, let's just do the math on that right now. I'll pull my calculator up right now. We've got 100 units of value. You're going to divide it by 7.4 billion. So that's like 7 billion, 400 million. And there's the thousands. And then there's the tens. I think that's it. And there's this ridiculous number, all right? It's like 0.0000000 135. Some okay, that is so much smaller than 1%. However, in the past, according to the equality of outcome people, it was 100 units of value divided by only 100,000 people. That means that you had a share a value that was 0.001, not 0.00000000135 repeating. That would mean that our ancient ancestors had significantly more value in their lives than we do, and their lives were better because of it. Now, that's obviously not true. And I don't think anybody would ever argue that that is the case. So if that's not true, then what's the problem with this situation? Well, the problem is that life is not a zero-sum competition for wealth and status. Wealth and status can be created through hard work. There isn't just a fixed amount of value in the world and that it must be fought over endlessly. People can create new value for themselves. And that is the fundamental false premise of communism and socialism. They also say here the most important thing is ensuring that only the smartest and hardest working among us end up the victors. It's not about them ending up the victors. It's not about some kind of overarching social structure determining that these are the victors and these are the losers and that's how it is. No, it's about the victors becoming victors by their own hand. It's not about ensuring that they do. They will ensure that they do through their work. It's not up to us to ensure that hyperproductive people are hyperproductive and then, gain the fruits of their hyperproductivity. That's not our job. That's their job. And they'll do it all on their own if we leave them alone. It assumes there will always be an underclass. It just wants to reserve membership for those who truly deserve it. Well, until we get Star Trek levels of technology where replicators basically remove all material need, there will always be an underclass. There will always be a person who is willing to do the absolute bare minimum just to scrape by and have nothing but what they need to survive for that day. There will always be that person. There are, of course, people in the underclass who don't deserve it, who have had a bad break, who, if given an actual chance, would take that chance and seize it and start rebuilding their life. If they could go to school, if they could get a job, they would actually make something of themselves. And those people need help. And that's because our society does not have a perfect equality of opportunity. Just because we haven't done it yet doesn't mean that it's not a goal worth striving for. We shouldn't want a better underclass. We should want no underclass, a world in which there might be some inequality, but deep poverty is a thing of the past. This is describing an instance where if someone doesn't work hard and is just kind of loafing around and not doing anything, and those people do exist, that either he should be lifted up by society, which would be a monumental undertaking to do it to everyone, or society should be pulled down to his level to make it equal. And that, while monstrous in and of itself, is much easier to do. A decent society shouldn't try to build a better aristocracy. It should try to achieve a reasonable and rising standard of living for all. Well, that's the problem, is that you're not going to achieve a reasonable and rising standard of living with equality of outcome. You're going to achieve an unreasonable and falling standard of living for everyone, including the rich. This will not make the poor richer. It will make the rich poorer, and the poor will be the exact same way that they currently are. It's just that everyone will be down in the muck with them. But totalitarian, overarching, far-left control of society won't end with economics. It's even reaching into the past, because people are rewatching American Pie and getting seriously offended by it. Now, I remember watching American Pie. I might have been 12 or 13 or 14. I was young. I thought it was hilarious. Like, amazingly funny. I rewatched it when I was, 24, 25. 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, something along those lines. It wasn't nearly as funny as I thought it was when I was a kid. And I bet if I went to go back and watch it now, I probably wouldn't like it. There are very few things from my childhood and early teenage years that I still absolutely love with a passion. Video games are one of them. There are certain video games that I still think are masterpieces, like Chrono Trigger on the list, masterpiece. GoldenEye, still a really fun game. Earthbound, amazing game, my favorite game of all time. For movies, I still find Jackass 1 pretty funny, but like most stuff I've grown out of, and that's just the nature of it. I think your tastes just change, and certain things will not survive on nostalgia alone. But people are rewatching American Pie and getting offended by it. Let's see. It was one of the first films of its kind, a gross-out comedy following hapless teenagers as they fumbled their way through their formative years. I'm sure we all have stories like this. I know I do, for fuck's sake. For most people, it was a lesson in how not to do things and ultimately, or hopefully, redeem yourself before it's too late. The antics of Jim, Stifler, and the rest of the gang inspired a wave of movies aimed at a specific audience. These were movies not to watch with your parents and ones to joke about with your mates at school the next day. Yes, of course. Then again, perhaps that was the problem. Their influence could well have had a negative effect on impressionable viewers. Okay, this passage here, this was written by somebody who, in their preteens and their early teens, watched American Pie and loved it. And now that they're 35 and they have kids of their own, and maybe those kids are coming up on this age, maybe those kids are 8 or 10 or 12 or something, they're starting to realize that, oh, now I'm the parent. And now my kids want a modicum of privacy. They want to be able to maybe explore their humor, or explore their sexuality, or explore other private parts of their life without me helicoptering over them. And that's not allowed. Because now I'm the parent, and I'm a good person. I mean, my parents were bad, but I'm not bad. So I should be able to stick my nose into every aspect of my young child's life. Of course. That's what this sounds like. This sounds like the young hipster who has aged out of being cool and is now a parent and is trying to make it sound like being the parent is being cool and that their kids are the uncool ones. Some viewers are looking back not so fondly. Almost 20 years since American Pie's release, people are finding it an uncomfortable watch thanks to jokes which have dated poorly. There are, of course, numerous scenes in the film which cause controversy then, and now, the least of which is a guy doing unspeakable things to an apple pie. A woman getting changed while being secretly filmed and broadcast over the internet, for example, the film's depiction of women in general or a certain character's inherent homophobia are just a few things which spring to mind. Of course, American Pie isn't the only product of the 90s not to have aged well. The sitcom Friends has recently come under fire for its dated jokes and attitudes towards the LGBTQ+ community, especially the character Chandler and his relationship with his father. Is it surprising some things made 20 years ago haven't aged well in terms of today's standards? And how will today's programs fare in 20 years? Only time will tell. That's the thing about changing attitudes. You can't go back and censor the past because people's attitudes have changed. I mean, this is like the controversy over Huckleberry Finn and them wanting to censor various racist terms used in that book. It was written in a time, one, when those terms were not seen as nearly as bad as they are now, but two, they were used for a very specific intent. They were used to not necessarily describe the characters that those slurs were aimed at, but describe the characters that were using the slurs. Do you follow me? It's a character commentary on the people that would say those things. You know, it's groups like ISIS that take down offensive statues of the past if it doesn't fit with their current religious doctrine. And you do see SJWs knocking over historical statues or doing protests about important parts of history that, yes, by today's standards are quite racist. But you can't simply whitewash the past. That's not how it is. And moreover, it's fucking American Pie. And continuing directly on from last week's SJ Weekly, we have state-run Swedish kindergarten forces boys to wear a dress. Oh boy. The children are not to be called he or she, they must all be called hen, a gender-neutral pronoun, with boys being forced to dress like girls. Going by the name Anna in the interview for her protection, she describes how even the books in the kindergarten are reviewed and all gender references changed to the correct terms to the current genus theory. Popular children's books such as Emil and Pippi have been discarded and replaced with children's books on trans and homosexuality. Group discussions with children as young as 1 and 2 talk about boys falling in love with boys and girls falling in love with girls. At times, the children are asked about whom they are in love with. One boy, looking confused, answers, "My Lego." My God. Anna goes on to reveal that it is not even permissible to tell a child with new clothes that they look nice, nor are they allowed to tell a child that they are cute. Words such as boy, girl, mum, and dad are forbidden. Only gender-neutral terms are allowed. Some of the parents also attempt this practice outside of the kindergarten and are offended if they are referred to as mum. They wish to be called parent. However, many of the parents are confused as to how fanatical the kindergarten is about these genus theories. Words like snowman and Santa Claus have been replaced with the correct terms, and a popular Disney film has been blacklisted. Anna has ignored the directives of the municipal-run kindergarten when asked by a girl, "Am I a boy or a girl?" She answered, "Little girl, you are a girl." She explains, "I cannot follow these rules. I just cannot. They go against everything I know." This sounds like complete fucking insanity. Alright? There are languages that have gender-neutral pronouns. But those languages evolved naturally to have them. And it's not really that big of a deal. And at the same time, they obviously have other ways of differentiating gender that don't involve pronoun usage. And this idea of talking about kids as young as 1 and 2 about falling in love, like even at that point, heterosexual love should kind of be off the table, you know? It's like, hey, 1-year-old, are you in love with a 1-year-old of the opposite gender? No, they're not. They're not yet developed enough to know what any of that shit means. Let's keep going. Let's keep going down the rabbit hole here. This is on the Washington Post. Another hurricane is about to batter our coast. Trump is complicit. Trump is complicit. He holds the magic wand that summons the hurricanes. He stands on a great vista overlooking the ocean, and he raises his arms and he says, "Hurricanes, the United States is ungrateful for my leadership. They must be struck down." And then the sky parts and the storm appears in the distance and the winds swirl up and the ocean becomes choppy. I wonder I wonder how Trump is complicit. Hold on. Yet again, a massive... Trump's done this multiple times. Yet again, a massive hurricane feeding off unusually warm ocean water has the potential to stall over heavily populated areas, menacing millions of people. Last year, Hurricane Harvey battered Houston. Now Hurricane Florence threatens to drench already waterlogged swaths of the East Coast, including the nation's capital. If the Category 4 hurricane does indeed hit the Carolinas this week, it will be the strongest storm on record to land so far north. President Trump issued several warnings on his Twitter feed Monday, counseling those in Florence's path to prepare and listen to local officials. That was good advice. Yet when it comes to extreme weather, Mr. Trump is complicit. He plays down humans' role in increasing the risks, and he continues to dismantle efforts to address those risks. It is hard to attribute any single weather event to climate change, but there is no reasonable doubt that humans are priming the Earth's systems to produce disasters. Now, I actually do completely disagree with Trump on the environmentalism, global warming, climate change argument. I don't think it was an invention by the Chinese. I do think that humans are having a massive impact on it. However, the United States, as wasteful as it is, it's not as bad as India and China. And if the US, if Canada, and if Europe just shut everything off, turned it all off, and said, you know what, we're just going to completely regress back to an egalitarian society. No more power usage. The Earth would still continue to heat up at roughly the same rate. Because China and India are pumping way more carbon into the air, and the rate at which they're doing it is increasing. Obviously, we should do our part. You know, I think if we can transition to green technology, if there is green technology out there that will work out, we should probably be looking into it. And you know what? Even if you don't believe in climate change, breaking the West's dependence on Saudi oil is a good enough reason in itself. You know? Even if it turns out that climate change is completely fake, maybe we shouldn't be funding the state of people that want to kill us because they have oil. But nonetheless, just because Trump does not believe in climate change, that doesn't make him complicit. You know, maybe you could trace back a certain effect, right? Maybe you could say, okay, Trump has signed certain bits of legislation, or he's made certain public statements that have adjusted the public's perception of climate change by this measurable amount. And that measurable amount has led to a slight increase in people's pollution. And then that pollution leads to a little bit more carbon in the atmosphere. But if you were to really calculate your way through all of those causes and effects and get back to Trump, how much do you think he's actually complicit in creating this fucking hurricane? I've also got this tweet here by Mark Luchtman. And his tweet said, "Know why biracial adults identify with their black lineage and not their white lineage? Because there's no benefit of being white, no privilege." He decides to take this tweet of his and post it on his Facebook page. And then Facebook bans him for 30 days. You can't post, comment, or use Messenger for 30 days. This is because you previously posted something that didn't follow our community standards. This post goes against our standards on hate speech, so no one else can see it. Now, there's no hate speech in this post. He didn't say that being half black or being fully black was a bad thing. He didn't even say it about being white. He just said that biracial adults identify with their black lineage because there's a privilege in being black and there's no privilege in being white. And obviously, I think that especially in the United States, there's definitely a privilege in being white. I mean, people who say that white privilege doesn't exist, I don't buy that. I do think that there are going to be instances, if you're a black person and you like roll into a deep south all-white neighborhood, you're not going to be lynched or you're not going to be shot like the old days, but you might be given a side eye here or there. You might be made to feel unwelcome, you know. But that's probably the extent of how bad it gets nowadays. However, if you're a white person rolling into the ghetto, you're going to feel the exact same way. In terms of the coastal regions, the elitist regions of the country, is there a privilege in being black? Absolutely. That's what the whole diversity hire thing is about. It's about giving minorities privileges. So there's nothing hateful in this post. It's actually factually accurate for certain parts of the United States. But apparently it's hate speech somehow. I don't even know who it could be possibly hateful towards. This entire video so far has basically revolved around of far left tyranny and censorship. And I think we can end on this. Why PayPal's crackdown on ASMR creators should worry you. It's misogyny weaponized again. Those of you who don't know, ASMR is a type of video where like people lean into the mic. They go like this here. They go like... They get really close to the mic and they talk softly. And they smack their lips a lot. And then you turn off your lights and you close your eyes and listen to it in the darkness and you feel soothed by it. Shit like that, right? And basically the whole point of it is that it kind of makes your ears feel tingly and you kind of feel refreshed after it. But also there's a sexual component to it. There's definitely sex-based ASMR. I guess it's like a new fetish or something. However, people who make ASMR on YouTube, PayPal no longer allows you to send them money. In June, China banned and excised videos of sound effects while claiming to cleanse its internet of pornography. YouTube had already demonetized the genre in a sex panic. Now PayPal is banning people for life and holding individuals' funds, ignorant of the facts and marching lockstep to the tune of 8chan trolls enacting a campaign to punish whores. The most bitter punchline in all of this, a tiny percentage of the entire video genre is even remotely sexual, and those suffering, female creators, aren't even making sex content. This past week, non-sexual ASMR video creators Shannon Dubois, Scottish Murmurs, Creative Cal, and Rose ASMR have been permanently banned from PayPal and had their funds frozen for 180 days. Like with YouTube's July censorship sweep, the women create videos of sound effects and have been expelled from the payment utility under alleged violations of the company's sexual content policy prohibitions. ASMR community websites are now warning all creators to avoid PayPal. Well, here's the problem with all this. I'm sure for 8chan it is about punishing whores, but that's not what it is for PayPal. You say it's misogyny weaponized again, but that's not what it is. The vast majority of sexual censorship nowadays does not come from the right wing of politics anymore. It does not come from conservative Christians wanting to get people to go back to church on Sundays and telling them not to have sex before marriage. It's coming from the left now. It's coming from the radical feminists who say that sexual content objectifies women. It's coming from the radical Islamists who have aligned themselves with the radical feminists, who say that it's blasphemous for a woman to be seen without having her hair covered in public. And right now, a lot of these tech companies, presumably including PayPal, are headed up by radical leftists. That's why conservatives on Twitter and Facebook get routinely censored when far leftists do not. It's because there's an obvious bias. PayPal responded to them with the following statement. PayPal has no policy against autonomous sensory meridian response, ASMR, related content that does not otherwise violate PayPal acceptable use policy. So if there are policies being put in place at these companies that relate to sex, that you can't use PayPal or Patreon to sell sexual things, that you can't sell sexual games on Steam, which has thankfully been overturned, that you can't post sexual content on Facebook or Twitter, that this is not the fault of the conservative right. It might have been if this were 50 years ago, but it's not now. Now it's caused by the authoritarian left. Because just as the conservative right views this stuff as, say, distasteful or blasphemous or unchristian-like, the authoritarian left views this stuff as oppressive and problematic and misogynist. So while 8chan might be jumping in on this situation, because that's what 8chan does, they're trolls. They don't take a political side, they just fuck with everyone. And while they might be getting in on this, this is really an example of the left eating itself. Of the TERFs and the radical feminists looking at sex-positive women and saying, no, you must be covered up, but probably in a fucking niqab because you're offensive.